because you had mentioned earlier on that this is guesswork. So for you, how should this budget really look like, ideally? We are saying 3.6 trillion against a collection of about 1.2, 1.8. What should it look like?
Yeah, the reason why I said guesswork, and I know the very able doctor said 2020 doesn't matter. Let me give you why it matters. Look at the budget GDP figures they've put for 2020 and the estimated GDP figures they've put for 2021. The estimated GDP figures for 2021 is 12 trillion. Mm-hmm. If you take the last GDP figures for 2019, which was 10 trillion, they're telling us the Kenyan economy has grown by 24% in 2 years. That is guesswork. Yeah? Completely guesswork. Even their own estimation is GDP has not, if it grew last year, it grew by 0.6. How do you move from 10.1 to 11.2 in 1 year, and you said it grew by 0.6? Because now when you base your budget on a fictitious GDP number, yeah, what happens? You're going to say KRA is going to collect more. Yeah, and that's why KRA historically every year meets on an average of around 220 billion. Yeah, this goes to the deficit that is there. If you use a fictitious GDP figure or an Alice in Wonderland type of GDP figure, you start saying, no, we've reduced our budget deficit to GDP is now 5%, when the truth of the matter, it is actually not 5%. And you know, when the government wants to hide from something, they use a statistic that is very hard to verify. They will throw for you GDP, they will throw for you diaspora remittances, they will throw for you we created jobs in the informal sector, because there is no way you can verify those figures. And that's why Jubilee government has been creating more jobs in the informal sector and nothing in the formal sector, because in the formal sector you can easily do a survey. Why are we where we are? Yeah. Dr. Mtoa said Kibaki tried to live within his means, which is partly correct. He borrowed sensibly. Then come the new government that came in and pursued a capital-intensive economic growth agenda in a capital deficit economy. Kenya is a labor-intensive economy. We have so much labor that is not being utilized. Why not pursue a labor-intensive agenda so that you get coverage in terms of employment? When people start getting jobs, they get income. When people get income, that's only at that point where you start lifting people out of poverty. But you pursue a capital-intensive project like SGR, Nairobi Expressway, and you are treating economic symptoms, not the economic problem. Yeah. Let me give you an example of the Nairobi Expressway. Traffic congestion in Nairobi is not an economic problem. It's an economic symptom of the rural economy that has been killed, and everyone is flocking into Nairobi. Instead of urbanizing the rural areas so that someone who grows in Kakamega has no desire to come to Nairobi whatsoever, because there's an urban center there that is creating jobs for them. So now we have spent, I don't know how much is the expressway, 140 something billion to treat a symptom. Yeah, if that money had gone to the counties to actually develop the economies in the counties, you have sorted the problem of traffic in Nairobi. No one wants to come to Nairobi. So when I say it's guesswork, it is a budget. When you look at it, if you just even go through the numbers, I'll give you an example. National Treasury has a larger allocation than health and agriculture put together. What does National Treasury need 183 billion for? Yatani has to answer that question in Parliament today. What does National Treasury need 183 billion for? Yeah. We are talking of statistics. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics has given a paltry 1.7 billion. And you expect to get timely statistics from that. So if this budget was to make sense, and if ever we're going to get to a balanced budget or even a surplus budget, we need to move away from a capital-intensive economic growth agenda. There's no point of getting Volvo to come and create a factory in Nairobi. Cam will tell you, because it's automated. Most people will employ only 50 people, 60 people. Yeah? But we're an agricultural economy. 70% of the whole economy is agriculture. Why not get a tractor assembly plant? Why not get an irrigation equipment manufacturers to come in the country? So if you look at the priorities that are in this budget, it is not a recovery budget. We don't know what they're trying to achieve with this budget. The purpose of fiscal policy is to create employment, stable prices, and growth. yeah, but growth that has income. But when you go through 3.6 trillion and trying to really pinpoint what is actually going to spur growth in this 3.6, where are jobs actually going to, what environment is being created that the private sector can grow, and because the government is not in the business of employing people. Government is in the business of creating an environment that allows the private sector to expand, employ more people, but that has not been happening in the last 7-8 years. Deficit is at 1.2 trillion. What you're not being told is our friends in the August House asked for an additional 240 billion on top of what Yatani had put. And if you look at the things they've asked in the 240, there's actually nothing for Mwananchi. There's 100 million for decentralizing counseling services for police. There's 1.7 billion for IBC to build a headquarters. I'm thinking IBC have bigger problems than a building. And what is the government doing buying buildings? Why not offload those buildings to your pension funds? Sort out your pension debt by the pension funds having that asset now as an asset on them, lease back the building from them. Why is the government holding on to Safaricom and KCB? If they sell just 5% of Safaricom and 5% of KCB, they will be able to raise 360 billion. 360 billion covers half of your deficit for this year, reduces your borrowing. We have doctors, PhDs seated in Treasury. We have 27 MPs who sat in the Budget Parliamentary Committee and came up with an additional 240 and did not reduce anything. And that's why I say this is just pure guesswork.
Okay.